Hello, world. It's been a while. Um, I kind of don't like that tagline, "Welcome to my mind," but yeah, I think that'll be the last time I say that. Just "Hello, world" is fine. I haven't done one of these podcasts in a while because I've been in a process, a sort of journey. A lot of things have been happening, and I stopped creating content. Now I feel as if though I can continue slipping down the rabbit hole and eventually stop creating content altogether forever. I realize that maybe me doing things like talking about my life, writing about my ideas, creating stories about other people's and other events that have happened in other people's lives. This is sort of a job that I guess I'm trying to do. It's not really what I want. I don't want it to be a job, but at the same time, I need money. But I don't think it'll be something that'll happen forever. I don't think the future holds for us any kind of situation wherein we need to make money out of the things we love. I think just lecturing or talking to people is something I'll be able to do, and I won't have to find a way to monetize that, which is nice. All that aside, today I had an interesting experience. One of my German speaking partners sort of set me off. Um, we were speaking about certain things, and then the Floyd story came up. And all I had said was, my idea isn't very popular. My opinion of that isn't very popular. And them being German, of course, that sort of rings a familiar bell. They say, oh, then you must immediately be someone who is racist. And it's like, how you can come to that conclusion simply from a statement such as, well, I don't have a very popular idea when it comes to this issue, is beyond me. I mean, this is anyway, it set me off. And so I expressed myself today. I expressed myself on social media. And it was really out of necessity. It's a kind of doing the work, being a human being facing adversity. So I made a video, it lasted 8 minutes. It really came from the heart. I sort of stutter in it a lot. I don't speak that clearly, but at the end of the day, I think I expressed myself well enough, and I really just made a political statement insofar as my personal feelings about identity politics. That's really what it was. So I realized, okay, that was great. I think I've made my statement. I've put it out there for people to understand that I'm a person with whom you do not want to bring up this conversation. You do not want to, let's say, go down the identity politics road with me. I think I have several friends who do post the kind of things that I really don't agree with, and that's fine. And I don't want to censor them. I don't want to delete them off Facebook. That's not what I want to do. And that's why I put out the video. It was to sort of try to get them to change their mind. Now, normally I'd be a little bit more diplomatic, which I started that way, and as I normally kind of have this runaway effect, it happened again. I kind of become a little bit more passionate, let's say, and it was from the heart. So I think it's good. I never really post anything like that. I don't talk about my personal life very much on Facebook. I just sort of post things that I like, or sometimes I'll make a political statement or a joke, or I'll put a meme up. But I never really go into deep sort of stories about myself like that, just straight up in public. But I think that was facing adversity. I think that ultimately brought me some kind of integrity, because instead of running away, deleting social media, whatever it was, excuse me, and I think it would just be hypocritical, because my idea is that, or the position that I hold is that we must speak, we must stand up for ourselves, stand up for what we believe in, and especially with those we love, you don't want to just run away or cut them off, or that doesn't help anything. So as much as I have difficulties with confrontation, I think it was important for me to do that. So that was my experience, and I realized driving home tonight that I should create more content. Now I know this is perhaps not the kind of content people want to listen to or hear, or maybe what I have to offer is not what I'm offering right now or within these podcasts at the moment. But um, to continue the work, to continue practicing my speaking, I should say. Sorry, I'm very brain foggy as well lately. Um, yeah, I think it's a good thing, and the idea is to bring value to the world at some point. Sure, something that I can monetize, but something that someone can really benefit from, that makes it worth it for them. I think to me, that's really the best exchange I can hope for is to only monetize the worldview that I have, the understanding of certain concepts that I have, and perhaps the information that I can organize in a easy way to understand sort of fashion. These things I believe are okay to monetize and exchange for, you know, a solid understanding of these things and maybe an advancement in your personal growth. And so, yeah, why not? At that point, that's really all I'm in it for. I can make a living, you can grow personally in some way, and that's a good exchange. So, I'm back on the horse, I guess. I'm just starting off with this, I would say, self eating kind of process where I just talk about what I'm thinking about and what I think about what I think. Sort of a, I don't know how you would call that, like a closed loop process. But it's interesting. Will I ever need to go back and listen to what I've made, like podcasts where I just ramble on freeform? I think it might prove necessary or useful in the future. Either way, um, let's go into a little bit of why I wanted to talk tonight in terms of content. An experience, a feeling that I had, sort of light bulb moment, and it was, you know, I don't. I've been quiet recently. I'll start with that. Very quiet uh, in terms of my mind. You know, my mind is not thinking about things in a very dramatic fashion and with the intensity of focus that I normally have. I'm very, very much loosely thinking about things and it just passes and I move on towards um, focusing on things that are a lot more simple, like, okay, dealing with my Amazon packages and planning my next road trip or, you know, day hike or somewhere. You know, what am I going to do kind of thing tomorrow. That's about it. And this has led me to realize that I don't have the energy nor the willingness to do the philosophical work that I normally do, or read books, or even write in my journal, or, of course, even do this sort of personal podcast type thing. And then, out of nowhere, I realized that because this is the case, life almost seems to demand of you when you are quiet to face something. It's interesting. When you clear away all of the, let's say, unnecessary things in your life, in your, you know, or in your mind. And by unnecessary, I mean things that do not really have any priority in you facing your life, facing yourself, fixing the problems that really lie at the root of what life is supposed to be for you. Then, as you start to declutter and step away from things that aren't really high on the priority list, like, for example, politics and philosophy and so on. I mean, it's relevant. Philosophy is always relevant to who you are and what you're doing, but at the end of the day, doing the work is different than thinking about doing the work. So, by that I mean I could philosophize all day about what it means to have a discussion with your mother, for example, or facing your childhood bully or whatever it is, you know, and then actually doing those things. So I've been doing the work. Now, it's funny because I've never really had the strength or the constitution to be able to face some of these issues in my life properly with the strength and the patience needed, because all of this philosophy and writing and reading and intellectualizing and planning and business sort of ventures, they've all been zapping all my energy and my focus away. So, of course, when it came to simple things like communicating properly with your family when they aggravate you, instead of just getting really angry and yelling, but to actually breathe, to actually have the ability to catch yourself, breathe, and then think for a second. Think about how you are in an irrational state, and then try your best to actually, in the moment, speak to the person calmly and with neutrality. So I've had the ability to do that. Now, it's funny because you kind of tend to think, well, why is life bringing me this now when I've decided to put everything down so that I can recuperate and relax? Life brings me these sort of trials and tribulations that I have to overcome. But it's not like life is, it's not like there's this person out there that's saying, ah, perfect, now I can bring it. Those things were always there. They just never were dealt with properly. So yeah, it seems difficult when you have to face these things when you finally have the energy. When you're like, okay, cool, I have the energy and the focus to face some of these personal problems in my life now. And then when they happen, you feel kind of like bitter against life. You're like, well, why are you bringing me this? I'm trying to be at peace here. I'm trying to run away. Well, not run away, but like take my time so that I can recuperate and do what's proper. But yeah, in actuality, what's happening is the problems of life are always there. It's consistent. They always happen on a regular basis. It's just that you notice now that you have the ability to deal with it. And just because you do, you feel as if though you're entitled to it not having to happen anyway. And it's just not realistic. So that's really what I'm going through recently. But it's nice. It feels like, okay, great. Normally, I would just get angry, it would just go sideways, but then I would divert myself by thinking about the things I normally think about and just kind of escape through these other thoughts and hobbies and distractions. So, yeah, very interesting development in my life. Now that I'm practicing and mending my relationships, and it's a rough road, but it works. I feel like I'm making headway, and this is all very important because it's coming to a climax. Speaking of climax, I'm going to pivot here and speak a little bit about this new book that I've been reading by Camille Paglia. It's called Free Women, Free Men, Sex, Gender, and Feminism, something like that. Anyway, very long title. And she speaks about how one of the differences between men and women is that women understand the regularity of life, how there is a consistency, there is a constant uh, present in life. Things happen in cycles, right? And she maps that onto the biological effects of the female anatomy, of course, right? She's talking about menstruation. So the idea that women understand that life is all about cycles, which is something of a theme in every single major philosophy, religion, and science, really. It's all about cycles, repetitions, predictions, you know. So, like the Mayans, for example, it's all about cycles. It's how they discovered the calendar and the movement of stars and so on. So women understand that almost from, teenhood, right? Menstruation it's part of. So it's almost like woman has the ability to face life as it is or to accept it as it is, whereas men tend to function more in a becoming. And by that I mean we have let's say the need or the necessity is there for us to have to become who we are, become something of ourselves, right? And that's ultimately why we are always in gear towards living a climactic life. It's always a uphill battle towards some kind of climax. and then it drops, you know. So men are a lot more choppy in that sense. It's up and down, up and down. So it's kind of interesting how society typically views woman as being up and down. But woman simply accepts her ups and downs, her variances, and they're very regular. But overall, she has a stability to her, and that's what allows her to be the rock of the family. And the rock of the relationship, the rock of everything. And that's a tough position to be in, of course. You have to be the rock and strong, but at least you understand that early on. So that's what Camille Paglia is talking about. And whereas men, it's like, okay, we climax and then we drop, and it's just very frustrating. And the two aren't necessarily compatible. But if you're thinking about it in larger terms, and I love Camille because she's very Nietzschean. She's like a libertarian, and yeah, very Nietzschean. And she noticed that about Nietzsche, who really did sort of open the road towards the idea that femininity and masculinity is something that you can liken to his idea of going beyond good and evil. If you think about going beyond good and evil, the idea there is that there's a spectrum. There's no absolute truth about any particular concept or morality or feeling or truth that you think can be objective. So by that he meant that you can't call an act good or evil. There's something of a mixture of the two. Now you can categorize it all you want and try to paint the spectrum of how good and how evil and what the concoction is there, whatever. But ultimately there's a mixture there. It's the same thing with femininity and masculinity. And so because women have a masculinity to them and because men have a femininity to them, it seems to revolve around balance, which is why Eastern philosophy and thought is very interesting and very attractive to Western thought as well, right? That they're coming together, they're really adopting each other because it overall puts into practice the idea of balance between these things. And so I forgot why I wanted to talk about this, but ultimately it had to do with the fact that I'm reading this book. Ah, yes. And the idea behind how life really is for men was very interesting. I really liked the whole picture of us having this climax to us. It's always having to become something and then you reach a climax. That's always what we try to do, right? Reach some kind of end goal. But of course, that never ends. And so, having said that, being conscious of it, I feel like I can balance myself out a little bit more with my feminine energy, if you will. It sounds very woo woo like, but it really is the lack of a better term. So, that's the word I would use. So to become a little bit more feminine in how I can start to accept, like accepting life and how regular it is, how it cycles, and it's not just all coming to one climax at the end. Now I can have my climax and eat it too. I just had to say that because it's kind of weird. Meaning that my climax really is the point of death, you know, ultimate bliss, just pure peace. So that's the climax. I don't need to work towards something and anticipate toward a climax that I'm unaware of I can't paint the picture of yet because it's unknown. I know what it is. I know what the climax is for my personal individual life. So ultimately, I can flow through with the cycles and the regularities of life. And so I feel like integrating my feminine, let's say, instincts for that would help me become a better person and deal with life and achieve a stability that I really crucially need in my life. So, yeah, I'm in for a little bit more loneliness, I think, but it's been good. I think I've been really learning from being on my own and truly becoming someone that's self reliant, independent, not closed to the world, but ultimately not bitter when I'm unable to depend on someone. Becoming a man, as they would say in the old days, and now the as social justice warriors would just say, "Oh, that's enforcing a gender stereotype." What I mean is being true to my masculine side, right? Being honoring and fulfilling my male role. Uh, so I accept that. I accept that I'm a man and that I need to become. And I think by integrating myself with femininity, that's going to allow me to do that. Whereas, the problem with this is the thing about the postmodernists. I understand their position or their gripe, if you will. They don't like the idea of gender roles because they don't allow us to move forward as individuals. But that's not right. It's not the gender roles that doesn't allow us, or the ones that we enforce that doesn't allow us to move forward as human beings. It's the I would say it's the confusion about what gender roles are. You don't have to conform to doing certain actions in life in order to be a man. That doesn't, having a job, raising kids, being strong, working on a car, that has nothing to do with being a man. Being a man is having the ability to integrate your feminine side and then moving forward and reinforcing your overall masculinity with it. And vice versa, I would say, for a woman, to be a real woman would be to integrate her masculinity and have the ability to reinforce herself with it. And so it's a very personal thing. It's although society does intervene and makes it hard to do that, and that's where I agree with the postmodernists. We shouldn't intervene with that. I still don't like the idea that, oh, we have to make it as if though nobody has some kind of overall role. No, we have our own overall roles naturally at some point. Whether you want to define that as something else or not, that's fine to me. It doesn't have to look like the 1940s, all around American life type perfect family, right? So, yeah, that's ultimately also part of what's happening with me now, and it also ties into what happened today and why I made that video. I realized, look, this identity politics thing goes back real far for me. I was bullied, I was discriminated against, and I never really understood it consciously until today, actually. I said, wow, that's true. I was bullied. I was a victim, as some people like to say. That's not a word that I like to use. But I was victimized, if you will, in terms of race and discrimination, not just for my skin color, but also for my language. So for my style as well, the way I dressed, for my personality, for my opinions. I mean, I was discriminated against in every sense of the word. And even by my closest friends, my mentors and everything. So it's not the people, it's the ideology. I don't hold a grudge or a hatred towards people. I do have a difficult time not developing a hatred for the ideology that sort of possesses people. It's a fight to always remember, look, this person is good, they have a good heart, they have good intentions. It's that they're gripped by ideology. And at the same time admitting to myself that I have an ideology of my own that's gripping me, and to keep myself in check and to always try to be objective and to not let any one idea sink in to I would say too hard, or too, I don't want it to solidify, right? Too permanently. And so, yeah, that was interesting, because I grew up, yeah, very, very much in a multicultural setting. I had to adapt all the time, and that was kind of strange that I never really realized that that's why it's the reason for why I don't like the idea of identity politics is because I've had identity crisis my entire life. That's something I've always struggled against. But now I'm not struggling against anything anymore. I'm developing, and this is a big chunk of the puzzle, a big piece of the puzzle, I should say. To realize that part of my identity issues stem from, yeah, school and growing up unstable and so on. So there's so many pieces that I'm starting to weave together. The stability of the fact that I'm a man to begin with, and we tend to be unstable. It's always a becoming. I can be stable and still become. That's not a problem. I can stay in one city, I can stay in one country, and live and be somewhat of a routine freak, if you will, or honor a routine and then become something. Uh, and uh, and that's technically the key to integrate my femininity, to move past the Oedipal complex. I'm not going to get into that, and to achieve a stability that allows me to become a man. This is something that our generation, millennials, I'm speaking of here, is very hard pressed into having to learn, and it's a difficult one. But as much as I would have liked to exclude myself from that, I definitely have the issue here as well. So understanding it and moving forward with it is important. Um, and so when it comes to the morality thing, the way I can close off this podcast, but it really paints a good picture of who I am. The reason for why I don't like identity politics, and the reason why I don't like that, is because I don't like people moralizing over other people. And that's because I grew up in Roman Catholicism. I grew up proselytized all the time in different ways. My own like my family, my friends, my environment. I was told what to think, what to believe in, and me, I'm a free thinker. I think naturally, innately. It's just inherent in my personality. I was always an inquisitive person. I was always passionate and curious and adventurous and wild and free and energetic. And so these things do not jive well with the ideological possession of religion and society and politics. So all of those things tie into identity as well. And so the you take the disdain for moralizing over other people. I need to come up with a term for that. That would be great. But yeah, the disdain that I have for what I would call the epidemic of humans having to moralize over other people, in combination with identity politics. That's 1 + 1 = 2. That's the whole crux of who I am. I'm the, or let's say of not who I am, but my roots. The whole reason that those are very, very intense pieces of my personality is because that's how I grew up. I grew up in a very unstable world as a man, as a young boy, very rambunctious, who not only am I unstable in my manhood, but in terms of what Camille Paglia was talking about, men always have to become, but also unstable as a kid growing up, different cities, different provinces, neighborhoods, schools, having a difficulty to integrate anything. That while being hammered with this whole you have to believe certain things, that's just like fucking nuclear bomb. I sort of understand Nietzsche when he had said, I am dynamite. I mean, that I was literally created under the perfect conditions of pressure to become a person who has very strong ideas and feelings and visions about what should be and what should not be. And ultimately, I turned that on its head, and I said, wow, instead of exploding like the nuclear bomb that Nietzsche set off onto the world, I'm imploding because I do not want to be the judge of what should be and what should not be, except for what should be and what should not be for myself. And in order to do that, you do need to resist a little bit. So there's an implosion happening, and that implosion is what is creating a very strong center of gravity, I believe, pulling people in towards me. And a lot of people don't like that. They don't want to fall into the black hole pulled in by that strong kind of gravity. Others do, but they get hurt. Others are very attracted by it, like moth to flame, and eventually get hurt because they realize this is a black hole that's led me to nowhere. Because ultimately, you have to become your own center of gravity that collapses into your own black hole, and then you can just exist. So that's it. That's ultimately another picture that I've painted of my personality, and I feel it's perfect, perhaps. Until next time.